Hey, this is Troy Taylor with the Championship Football Coaches Clinic podcast, sponsored by Rack Coach and Sports Workbook. We have Jeff Fisher on tonight, and Jeff is with High School Football America. Jeff, how are you doing? And for the people that don't know that's tuning in now or will watch later, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from, Jeff.
Well, that may take a while, Troy. First off, thanks for having me on. I've been doing this for a long, long, long time. I started when I was 14, born and raised in the eastern half of Pennsylvania, and started then in radio. And I was blessed to be able to do that for a long time, going into my college years, and to cut a 48-year story short. Along the way, I've worked in newspapers, radio stations, obviously, television stations, and then in 2004, when I left kind of the anchor desk, if you will, at Fox Sports in Chicago, my wife and I decided that we were going to chase a dream and try and be an independent media company that tells the story of high school football. And the idea is to tell the story of America through high school football. It's something I've done, as I said, for 48 years. I guess my ego was large enough, and I was stupid enough to think that we could do that. And here we are in 2023. We've had a very successful run. We're coming up on year 20 next year. We do as much as we can to promote the sport, specifically the coaches in the sport. You guys are the background. I respect the heck out of you and everyone like you, whether it's at the HC level or DC, OC, guys just getting into the game. And we've had a nice run. So you can find us at highschoolfootballamerica.com. During COVID, we got a call from the NFL. NFL Play Football is a proud partner with us, and we're a proud partner of them. And one of the reasons they came to us is they saw the job that we've been doing for all these many years of promoting the sport and promoting the coaching profession. So I don't know if that made sense. There's a lot to fit in over 48 years, but that's the best way I can put the journey together. And we're just having a whole lot of fun. I tell everybody, God put me on this earth to do what I'm doing, and I'm going to try and do it until the day I leave this earth.
Amen. And I totally believe that because, I mean, your success speaks for itself. But the one thing that you said there was that the story of America. And I don't know if you were watching, I'm sure you were, when Damar Hamlin, when he went down on that field, I was really proud to be an American at that time. I was proud of our game and I was proud of our country and how people came together to pray and to support Damar. And it didn't matter what you looked like or where you were from or, how did that make you feel? Did you feel similar, Jeff?
Yeah, I think it was a real good side of the best of people, if you will. Certainly in that moment, there's a lot of things going through everybody's mind, and what was really really nice to see was that people did go to prayer, and Damar has talked about a lot of things since the incident and his faith and all that, and I think it's a good thing. I think it's something that we can all find some comfort in and some commonality in. So it was wonderful. And just, it's been so much fun to see the progress that he's made since that night. And as a proud Pennsylvanian, although I'm in the eastern part of the state, the Pittsburgh Central Catholic guy has done a pretty darn good job to bring us all together through the sport of football and prayer.
Yes, sir. You've had such a long career in media, radio, TV, and when I was a kid, I wanted to be a pro baseball player. I wanted to be Johnny Bench, but then I'd say, well, I want to be a TV commentator. And for a guy like yourself that has been in the business for so long, and now someone like myself who has only been doing this for a month, I mean, how does that make you feel that like media is so accessible to people like myself that know nothing? Like, how does that make you feel?
Hey, first off, as long as everybody tries to do it the right way, I'm fine with it. I happen to be given an opportunity when I was a teenager, and I learned the right way, I believe, to storytell and to be a journalist and all that. So, that's never ever going to change. It's never ever changed. Sometimes you'll see when you go to highschoolfootballamerica.com that we do longer form. We do podcasts. We do a lot of things, and I like I like something that's got some length and depth to it. That's why when you said, "Hey Jeff, I can use you for an hour or whatever it is you want to do," I'm like, "Yeah, I'm game," because that way you can truly tell the story. Now, as far as people that are in the media now because it is accessible, you being one of those examples, um, I have no problem with it as long as you're doing it the right way. Hopefully, it's not about you, Troy. You know what I mean?
It
And
definitely ain't about me, because no one would watch it if it was about me.
no, but it's from a standpoint of what we're talking about here, high school football. I think the more the merrier is good. Again, as long as it's being done the right way, because one of the biggest um, drawbacks I think to high school football in the media that I've heard ever since we tried to get this thing off and running in 2004 is, Jeff, it's a fractured um, story that you're telling, because not everybody in Pennsylvania is going to give a blankety blank blank about football in Nevada or Minnesota versus Florida or Texas versus California, and I just disagree with that. So I think there is a commonality that you can tell and tell the story of America through the lens of that. But with more people having access to the media, there are a lot of great guys around the country and gals that I've met that are doing things that are hyper local to heal that fracture that I was talking about, where again maybe someone in Iowa doesn't care about somebody in New Jersey and all that. So I'm fine with it. There are people out there that I see, whether it's tweeting or doing videos or whatever, and they're doing it for selfish reasons, which is themselves. High School Football America tries to do four things, and we've tried to do it not only in our 20 years in the business, but in my 48 years in the business, which is we want to try to promote the student athletes. We want to promote coaches and their staffs. We want to promote the program and the school. And then if we do all that right, we're promoting the community. So if we can do those four things, then we're doing something for the sport. And I think everybody, if you've got somebody out there that's just getting into the business like yourself, I think those are four tenets to keep your eye on. And if you do those things right, I think you can have a successful run at this.
Yes, sir. And a place like Richmond, Virginia, it's not a huge city, but we have 3 TV stations: ABC, CBS, and NBC. I mean, only one of those stations has local sports coverage. And the Richmond Times-Dispatch, we only have one paper. And when I was a kid, you'd run on Saturday mornings to see what were the scores, and they'd have 6 guys writing articles. And now there's hardly an article. So it seems like in these local papers that high school sports is not as important. I guess it doesn't sell paper. So I think it's more of a need. Your company's needed more than ever is what I'm saying. Do you agree with me on that?
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I do agree with you on that. I did have a moment in time where I was up for a job in Richmond. I cannot remember the TV station back in 2000. I was based in Allentown, Pennsylvania, the one that Billy Joel sang about, and I learned a little bit about Richmond then. But I'll stop there because otherwise I'll embarrass myself. But I say that because I'm going to take everybody back to my time at Allentown. And I think this is the true story of what local high school sports, and in this case, football specifically, because it is, kind of the tail that wags the dog type of thing. In 1994, I had been hired at the station. As I told you before, I had a lot of different backgrounds, and this was my first foray into television. And I kind of looked at the station, and just to kind of put it into perspective geographically for everybody, and I don't know with this reverse where I am, but we're about 50 miles north of Philadelphia. So here's Allentown, Pennsylvania. Here's Philadelphia. Somewhere over here is New York City, and then around there's not a whole lot that was outside of major market sports and news for that matter. And I happened to say to the news director at that time, we need to do something that is hyper local. And I think on Friday night, we need to do a television show that is Sports Center esque, that shows as many games as we can possibly show on the air. Basically, our games at that point were probably in 1994. We're ending around 9:30. So in about an hour and a half's time at 11 o'clock, turn all these games around and basically tell people what happened that night. Now, some in the newspaper business would say, "Oh, well, you've already taken away our audience," because people do, on Saturdays, or used to, run to the newspaper stand or have it delivered on the front doorstep
Mm-hmm.
and look at how their favorite team did, or the other teams that they may play down the road. But anyway, long story short, the boss thought it was a bad idea at best. And he said, "Well, we're not going to pay for this, but you're being such a pain in the backside. We're gonna give you a crack at this, and we're gonna find a little time slot." And when I say a little time slot, I mean a real little time slot. And they said at 10:45 on a Friday night, you've got 15 minutes to do what you say you can do. And they didn't even put us on the air. They basically, it was a scrimmage without playing another team, to put it in football terms, is the best way to put it. And we got a lot of people that didn't know a lot about football, and I taught them how to shoot video highlights. And long story short, they said, "You know what, that wasn't bad. It wasn't bad." And we finally hit the air live the second week of the season in Pennsylvania, and our viewership exploded. I had two coaches call me up from major programs. As a matter of fact, both have been on ESPN. Easton High School from Pennsylvania, and
Yeah,
Phillipsburg
they always
High
have
School
good
from New Jersey.
quarterbacks.
They're when we're still running the football there, but they play on ESPN. They've played on ESPN twice because they have a very special Thanksgiving Day game that has 15,000 people at it. Delaware River splits the two communities. It's a great thing. And the coaches called me up and they said, they use some language that coaches tend to use. I use them sometimes too. And anyway, so, we're supposed to be watching film here tonight, Jeffrey, but instead we're watching your TV station. And now I've got to bring all the guys over to my house and buy cheesesteaks and all this. And at that point, I realized that we had something. When the coaches endorse you, and you know this, right? When the coaches endorse something, it's a big thing. And here's the final point to kind of bring this all around about, when stations don't cover it now, or newspapers don't cover it. In 1994, we became such a force, and we went from 15 minutes to 90 minutes over the course of the 7 years before I left Allentown. And we just kept growing it and growing it and growing it. And what happened was the Philadelphia stations, Vicek Ahema, former NFLer, was one of the anchors there. The Philadelphia stations actually saw what we were doing, saw that we were cutting into their ratings, and they started covering high school football in Philadelphia. Now, they did it in a different way. They flew a helicopter over. They showed you two highlights from about 6 games, and that wasn't what we did. We did full highlight packages and all that. So hopefully that makes sense, because they realized that there was something there. And as we get more and more national news that goes on to the local broadcast, every station manager, general manager in the country should be going out and covering hyper local sports, and it will deliver for them. I guarantee it. That show is now, let's see, I went back to do a 25th anniversary in, I think 2018, I believe. And so it's now 29 years old, 30 years old. And very, very proud of that baby that I gave birth to. And it does what it did back then. It provides the local viewer with something they want to see, guaranteed. Even if you're not a high school fan, we put like cheerleaders on and band. I mean, that's the way we grew it. So, Uncle Tom and Aunt Sally may want to see that, because we had the band featured in there at some points during the show. So that was a long answer. I apologize for that, but hopefully it got toward what you were looking for.
Yes, sir. So a person that may be watching or going to watch that hasn't been to high school football America. I mean, America's big. So how do y'all manage to cover all the high school football in America? And what I mean, if someone hasn't been to your website, what would they expect to see? What do you want them to be able to see when they come to your site?
Yeah, it goes back to what I said at the top. We want them to see what we believe is the great sport and how it, blends into the fabric of this country. So we do a lot of different things. We started podcasting back in 2011. I still called it a radio show back then. I
Mm.
mean, we've had, I don't know, 250,000 listens through the course of the 10, 12 years. So we like to bring people on, and that's kind of what grew us into people who are like, oh yeah, if we go to Jeff and High School Football America, we understand we're going to get stories that are good. One of my favorite ones that I did early on, just to give you a for instance, is on one particular weekend, Vermont, Wyoming, and Utah had their state championships. And what we did was we took all of the generally the lowest classification coaches and put them into one radio show. So if I remember, it was Duchesne, Utah. This is like 2011, so hopefully my brain's still working tonight. It was Duchesne, Utah, Cokeville, Wyoming, and Woodstock, Vermont. If you put all of the population of those three communities together, it was about 10,000 people. And we just talked high school football. And people ate it up and, just loved it. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a background. And then as we evolved, as a media company, we started doing things like rankings. I created an algorithm. Everybody does opinion polls, and you know what they say about
Yeah.
opinions. Everybody has one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, we decided that, or I decided that I could create an algorithm. I have no background in that. I'm not a mathematician. I'm a journalist and all that. And we kind of figured out a way to do rankings through a formula that, and this is no disrespect to any state I were to pick, but just pick any of the small states out there. And sometimes USA Today, which I had a business relationship with at the time, they might have a team from Martinsburg High School in West Virginia. Great program there
Oh yeah.
in West Virginia, but they would sometimes end up in the top 25. Again, no disrespect to them, but if Martinsburg were to play, I don't know, Mater Dei, St. John, any of the big teams, how would they fare on a regular basis? Again, I'm not slapping it, but we created this algorithm, and that really kind of put us on the map because coaches started looking at it and calling up and say, Jeff, I think you really have something here. Those are the two things. We on Friday nights we have a partner called ScoreStream. You can find every score in America in real time by going to our website. So those are the things that we do in season that keep us excited. And now during the off season, I just like doing fun stuff. Today, for example, I put it up on Twitter. Marion Motley, the Pro Football Hall of Famer. People may or may not know who he is, but here's a quick story. I decided to go on. When I wrote my book a couple of years ago, I got what's called newspapers.com. And for those of you old enough to remember the old microfiche, or some call it microfilm,
Yeah.
so you can find newspapers from around the country. And I went on and I just decided that I heard a story about him a couple of weeks ago. And I'm like, oh, let's see what he did in high school at Canton McKinley High School, one of the great high schools.
I know his coach, Tom McDaniels. Was Tom McDaniels the coach there then?
I don't.
Josh McDaniels' dad.
Yeah, no. Well, at one point he was, yes, but Motley played in 1933, 36,
yeah,
37,
he wasn't
38.
the coach then.
He wasn't there then.
Yeah.
but what was cool about it was I was able to find a clip, and Marion Motley was 6th in the state of Ohio in scoring. And I put that clip up on Twitter, but I put the little story with it, which is the great story. And he was one of the first African Americans put into the NFL Pro Football Hall of Fame. And what it told me that should tell everybody what this man was like. As a junior, he averaged 16.8 yards per carry, and as a senior, 17.3. How would you like to game plan against that?
I don't know.
But anyway, so that so we try and do fun stuff like that. With the NFL, a lot of what they like us to do for play football, which is their part of the site that's dedicated toward youth and high school. We talk to coaches that played on Sunday and now are giving back in coaching.
It's awesome.
So and it's all about high school. We're not talking about their time as a pro. Never, ever comes up. Not because I'm being disrespectful to it, but most of us know what somebody did when they played on Fridays and or on Saturdays and Sundays. So
Yes, sir.
that's the best way to go to it. It's a lot of storytelling on there. Like I said, if you like podcasts, if you like long form, those things should put a smile on your face.
Does High School Football America, do they do anything that's hyper local, like specific to states like Virginia? And if we did, do you have to have a correspondent or somebody that's willing to help, or how does that work?
Yeah, hyper local usually is because something interesting happens. Somebody breaks a state record or whatnot. We have a lot of people around the country. We have interns that do a lot of our research and all that, and I do a lot personally. So in the state of Virginia, for example, we may have someone that sees something and says, "Hey, would you write a story about this, or would you take a submission like that?" And we're always happy to do those sort of things. We do state rankings for all 50 states and the District of Columbia. So that's about as local as it gets on a very regular basis during the season. But, the goal ultimately, and you may say, well, Jeff, you've been doing this 20 years. Why are you working on goals? Well, this was, basically my wife was the first investor. She did invested in us and invested in me, believing in what I could do. And we've just grown it, exponentially through the years. But really where we are now, with people understanding who we are and what we do, we are going to do a capital raise where ideally I want to have an editor that we would pay in every state to do those sort of things. That's the ultimate goal. The economy is what it is today, but I've never taken no for an answer in my life, and I'm not going to start now. But that's what I would like to do, and I think based upon the foundation that we have, we will be very, very well respected. The other question I get a lot of times is, do you get along with other media? Absolutely. I'm best friends with people at Max Preps, the local media, and all that. It's not a competition. We should all be here trying to make this game better and do those four things I talked about: promote student athletes, coaches, schools, and communities.
I want to ask you about when you said that there's a right way to storytell. And then I want to ask you what makes a good storyteller. So I think first, like, what makes a good storyteller?
Not going after the obvious question. The biggest pet peeve I have in media, and it doesn't matter whether it's high school sports, professional sports, local news, national news, and hopefully you'll recognize this as soon as I say it. Hate's a strong word, but I'm just going to say hate for emphasis. I hate when a sports writer, sportscaster, a journalist says they make a statement, but they never ask a question. For example, "Hey, Billy Smith, great game tonight." And then they stop and they expect Billy Smith to fill in the blanks. Ask a question, and please do not ask a yes or no question. I remember sitting at my TV station in Allentown, and the local newspaper there, the Allentown Morning Call, had a paid segment where they would bring on all of their sports writers, and they'd sit around a round table. You've seen them all across the country. So they were doing this. And in 1994 or 5, we had actually the first guy that ever flip-flopped in recruiting. His name was Dan Kendra. His dad played at West Virginia. He was a quarterback, had a cup of tea in the NFL. Anyway, Dan was the most highly recruited kid in the nation at that point, and he had a great story. He had a pet snake. He could leg press. I don't know. It was like 800 pounds. He was ripped. He
I
could throw the
remember
ball.
him. I remember him. Where did he end up going?
To Florida State. And
Yeah, I
the
remember
reason
him. He
he
ended up being like a
verbally
fullback.
committed. Yeah, exactly. And then he played with the Colts.
He's
But
from
he was a
PA?
quarterback. Yes, PA, from Bethlehem Catholic, Pennsylvania. His name Dan Kendra. Dan played at
I
West
remember him.
Virginia under Bobby Bowden. Anyway, I and Dan was, he was a good friend. He might not have been the sharpest knife in the box when it came to interviews, right? Because what high school kids, ready to be interviewed at that point. And like I said, you probably had everybody there from Inside Edition and all that. So he basically gives his verbal to Penn State before verbals were even anything. He was going to follow his girlfriend there, but at the end of the day, he was really just doing it for his girlfriend, and he ends up flipping and going to Florida State. So anyway, we're in this TV show that I'm watching. Everybody's sitting there. They're so happy that Dan's on the show live. And I won't say who said it, because I can still remember the guy who did it. He said, so Dan, you had a great game the other night. You guys closed out the season, and you were undefeated. You've now made your decision. College football is ahead of you. Are you excited for that? And Dan looked him straight in the eye and said, yes. And did what I just did. And the guy was so taken aback that he didn't continue to fill in the blanks, that they had to actually ask a question that he could answer. So that happens a lot. So that annoys me about it. And good storytelling is not going for the obvious, right? It's about finding out something that's interesting in someone's background. I'm trying to think of something. The other day I did an interview with someone, and he's a coach in California, and he had been named the Rams coach of the year. And we were just and he's at Long Beach Poly. They put the most players into the NFL.
Yeah, the Jackrabbits. Yeah.
Jackrabbits. Bingo. I don't have a prize for you, but you got ding, ding, ding. You got it right.
I know a guy that played for him. Basabalu. I coached him at Virginia Union University.
They've had some good ones come out of there. There's no doubt about that. But one of the things that I did was I realized that Coach had spent some time on Martha's Vineyard. Now, Martha's Vineyard, for those of you who don't know, is an island off of Massachusetts, Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard, and both happen to have high schools there, and they have a great football rivalry called the Island Cup. And while we were talking about Poly and we were talking about the Rams and the Don Shula Award and all that, I just went off tangent. I said, Coach, is only aside from Hawaii, there's only 3 schools that play on islands. You've got Avalon and Catalina, California. You've got Nantucket, and you've got Martha's Vineyard. You were there. What was that like? How did you get around? And he just told a wonderful story about, taking a ferry. Coach, when teams came out, they had to take a ferry going out, and then this great story about these 2 islands and going after each other. And if you don't take a few seconds, and somebody may say, well, why am I interested in this, Jeff? Well, because he told a really wonderful story about it, because I was able to at least understand that there was more than just a coach speak in the answers that he may or may not have given. You're all good at that,
I'm the best. You can Google me. But we interviewed a guy, the other day, and the guy was so smart. He was a ring announcer for the WWF before, they blew up and everything. But you couldn't ask him a yes or no question. So is that on the person asking the question, or is that on the person answering the question?
No, it's on the person asking it. I mean, it's not that hard. It's not that hard to do it. I mean, ask me something and I can flip it around to you. But yeah, it really is. And again, the evolution through my time in the business is kids are better now at giving interviews. They're very, very good at it, because people like myself and others like me go out there and them. I'm so impressed. I take myself back to when I was a baseball kid. I didn't grow big enough to play football. I played from 6 to 8 or 8 to 10 years old, but I never got any bigger. But I always think back, even though I'm good at what I do, I'm like, if someone came up to me and stuck a microphone in my face, would I have done as well as some of these kids do today? And I think my answer probably would have been no. And what I find to be the most intriguing thing, because I do love the spoken word without video, so I do like the podcast or radio show, whatever you want to say. And one of the hardest things you can ever do is do an interview with somebody where you don't see that guy's face. So, again, back to Billy Smith again. If Billy Smith is, I call up his coach and I said, Coach, Billy had this great game. He's got this great story. Let's get him on the podcast. It's amazing to me that a lot of these kids can do that, because it's the hardest thing you can do, in my estimation, is to just talk to somebody and give eloquent answers, or at least smart answers, when you've never ever seen the person's face. At least you've seen me. So, it is a little bit easier. It's a little different. Trust
Yes,
me.
sir. As a high school coach, my college coach, Glenn Ramsire, he always taught us be complimentary of your teammates, your coaches, and your opponents. So I kind of teach that to our guys. So we never say anything negative. We don't want to give any, bulletin board material. What advice could you give kids that are interviewing? Other than just be honest or something. I mean, like, what advice could you give a kid who is being interviewed?
Well, honesty comes first on anything, and you're right. You should always compliment those around you. I mean, if you do those things, it's great. One of the things that, because I do a lot of media training with people, not specifically athletes, but people in various walks of life, and this is something that's kind of a television technique. So if a young man or a young lady has a camera in front of him or her, and the reporter's asking the questions, a lot of times they can edit that up. And sometimes the best way to answer a question is by rephrasing the answer, the question you were given in your answer. For example, um, so so Jeff, the offensive line was incredible tonight. Why were they able to get off the ball differently in the second half? And what I would do is, well, Sam, my offensive line played wonderfully, and the reason that we were able to make the difference in the second half was blah 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 blah. And by doing that, you're giving yourself some time to think about the answer that you want to give. And it's also in television, because time is so short. It's done in 15-20 second sound bites. It gives the editor the opportunity to make the soundbite make sense. Otherwise, it may just be standing out there in the ether and doesn't make any sense. So that's a real fine point, but I
Yeah,
like
so
to tell people that.
I mean, it's a great point, because I remember in school they used to teach you to write in complete sentences. So, like, if they asked you a question, that's what you're doing right there, is you're answering it in a complete sentence, whereas it stands alone on itself. You don't have to hear what the question was. But I'm just a football coach, and
You
I'm
can
like
do
the
it
all
too. You
shucks.
can do it too.
Yeah, I'm just the all shucks like Bobby Bowden. Everybody's the best team and they're well coached, and we just need to play well to win type guy. Now, you said the right way to storytell. What is the wrong way?
To make it about, again, I can pick on examples. I don't do that. Who's watching out there? Just making it about you, having your back. That one, uh, and not really, put it. A lot of things are put out on social media these. I on some, the recruit area. I just love that young men and women get the opportunity to the next level, get paid to do the college. I'm not talking about the NIL at this point, but sometimes what's being put out there right now is not content. The 24/7 sports, all the rivals and all that. They just stick a phone in front of a kid's face, and all they want to know is, who do you have offers from? Who are you visiting? There's no homework there. There's no genuine storyteller. And quite honestly, if you look at those industries, the majority of the people that enjoy that sort of thing are usually older alones.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I don't want to go too deep on it, but do your homework, tell a story. Just don't, it's not news because somebody said I've reduced my choices to 5 teams.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
most don't follow up from that, you know.
exactly. I mean, the people that
I'm
like
ticking
those.
people off probably.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's either a kid's trying to see how many stars they got, or who's got what offers, or some high school coach is trying to see what guy's got another offer, or like you said, an alum, a booster, wants to know, well, who are we recruiting? And I mean, half the time, they don't even know who they're
What
recruiting.
and here's a story. I have a young man that is a friend of the family who I mentored a little bit, and I'll leave his name out of it. But the story, what I told him, because he was going to play, and he did play Power Five. He's still playing in the game, um, and he could have gone anywhere, but he chose because his grandfather had been awarded a scholarship there, and on the second or third play in practice, blew his knee out and never ever played again. The reason that young man wanted to go there was to fulfill his late grandfather's dream. Now, isn't that a better story than, hey, who'd you just talk with?
Yeah, I
You know,
totally agree.
and there's a lot of stories that you just got to know. And how do you do that? Well, you learn the coaches. You get the coaches to trust you, that are willing to, give you this information. I hate the word exclusive. Breaking. We had it first. Never cared about it. I just would rather have the story right. But the way you get that sort of stuff is by making sure that you are in the corner of generally the coaches, which that can then trickle out to, teachers, administrators, and or family. They, when they know they can trust you, then I just had a coach. Again, if I told you who it was, everybody would be like, wow. I'm just going to tell you that he came from a very, very national profile program, and he didn't want to coach there anymore. And I helped him get a job elsewhere, just because I knew people. I do that a lot. I do that behind the scenes. You never see me write about it. I'm telling you here, but I think it's a good way to understand something. He's since left that job just a couple of weeks ago that I helped him get, and he's going back into the college ranks to coach. And I knew he was changing jobs, and I was going to wait until that college made its announcement, that he was joining the staff there as the offensive coordinator. And lo and behold, I think this was like a Wednesday, and it was going to be the following Monday that I was going to write the story about him. And well, Football Scoop put it out there the day after. Again, not blasting Football Scoop. I'm just saying that's what they did. I called the coach up. I said, wow, we're still going to wait till Monday, but isn't it interesting who can be trusted and who can't? Because when he called me up from this nationally prominent program, I could have done a story on it. It would have been the biggest story of that month, and it was. It was all announced. But it's about being trustworthy and getting the coaches to understand that you're here to do the four things I talk about. It's not about me. Yes, I'm on here. Yes, I created this company. Yes, it's great to say we have an affiliation with NFL Play. It's all wonderful. But you know what? If I didn't do the blocking and tackling, right then and to this day, I'll just leave it at that. I think I'm going to areas where I might get myself in trouble.
That's okay. So, like, the progression of the company, I mean, y'all are like 40,000 followers on Twitter. How did he get that
26,
big?
26. Don't get us too big, but
26,000. I
26.
mean, how did he
Yeah.
get that big? I mean,
Uh,
was it, I mean, a gradual thing, or was there just like
Very
a point where
gradual.
boom?
No, very gradual. The one thing that I do is I have a hand in everything that takes place. I joke sometimes, and say, I guess this isn't a word that you should use these days, but in some ways, I'm a dictator when it comes to high school football in America. Nothing is going to go out there without my eyes on it. Everybody knows what we do, how we do it, the only way we do it. There's no blurring of lines. It's, if you don't do what we say, you're gone. And one of the things on Twitter, to get back to that, is I spent a lot of time early on when we didn't have the big volume. Maybe we're, 8, 9, 10,000. and I spent a lot of time personally making sure that I wasn't, seeing eggs on there or bots or anything along those. So for the most part, that helped. So once that the coaches and the players and know what you're there to do, I think then word kind of travels. If you look at our Twitter feed, it's not just High School Football America promoting its content. If somebody were to scroll through it right now, it looks kind of like when the Associated Press was the Associated Press. You'll scroll through there and see team put up their schedule. Somebody did something neat. Union High School out of Tulsa, they went on a camping trip last weekend. Hey, they were number 100 in the country last year with us. But what a great way to make things happen in the fall by working real hard in the wintertime. So that's the way it happened. It does create traffic for us, which is great. But ultimately, what we want to have on our social media are stories that are either national in nature, or that's where we can go a little hyper local. So if I see something in Richmond or anywhere else in the country that's a good story, you just hit retweet it and get it out there. So that's the way we kind of look at social media as a way to give everybody a snapshot of what's going on around the country.
Well, I got a story for you in Richmond, Virginia. There's a program called Highland Springs, and they've won 5 state championships since 2012, 13, 14, basically
The
since 14.
Springers.
Yeah, the Highland Springs Springers, they should be on your website. All right, because
Well,
beat
they
me.
are a regular in our national rankings, and those the coaches there are not afraid to tell me when they feel that we have not done justice via the algorithm to their rankings. They are one great football program, and I know this year they got a couple of big out-of-state games going on. That's one of the questions we get to most of the times, like with our rankings. What gets it done for a team, and it really is strength of schedule and tradition. Those two come in there, and that program has been very, very good. I think last year, who did they beat out of North Carolina? I can't remember if it was Chambers or
Holmes. No, it was. Did
Huff.
they change the
Might have been
name?
Huff. Yeah,
It was
Chambers
Vance. It was
used to be Vance.
Chambers.
Yeah, it
The
used to
orange
used to be
team.
Vance. So yeah, no, very very aware of that program there, and I know the state of Virginia very well because living in Atlanta, Georgia, right now, whenever I go to visit mom in Pennsylvania, I make that long trek up 81. I'm sure you know it well.
Oh, 81, yeah. I was just
It goes
glad
a long way.
I was glad you don't go up 95. 81's got to be better.
I've
Good.
done that once or
Yeah,
twice, and
there's no good way to get there.
yeah,
Okay, we got some questions here. We got this is my friend Kyle. He's down in St. Pete, and he coached at Lakewood High School when they had about Valdez, Scantlin. They had the twins, the Griffin twins, and they had Isaiah Wynn. He was one of the coaches at Lakewood. He's a great ambassador of the sport of football. Such an amazing voice as well. Great insight, Mr. Fisher. You guys love football, and that's obvious. So thank you for everything you do for the game, Kyle. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Like I asked the ring announcer guy, name some of your favorite wrestlers that you work with, and he said that he wouldn't. So, how do you break the country down? Let's just go Northeast. So I don't know what that means, but in the Northeast, who are a couple of the favorite coaches in that area that do a great job?
Yeah, I'll start making people mad if I don't hit the people in the Lehigh Valley, my hometown. So I'll just get that out of the way. I've had great relationships with guys at St. Joseph's Prep out of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Tim Roken is one of the best. Gabe Infante, who was there before him, and he's at Temple now.
Is he related to Lindy Infante?
I do not know if he is or not. I do not think he is, but I could be wrong about that. But those guys, everybody sees St. Joe's as being a power now, and they are. I mean, they've been to the state final in Pennsylvania's largest classification for 5, 6, 7, probably 8 years in a row along the way. But, they were not a great program. And Gabe is the one that built that up. And, people can go into, public versus private and have that argument. But, really, really wonderful guys. There were people from my hometown, like there's a guy named Bob Stem who played at Syracuse with Jim Ringo. Bob was a quote machine and just wonderful to work with. Augie Hoffman at St. Joseph's Regional in Montvale, New Jersey. He wasn't Rutgers, just lost his job. The Campanile family. And I say family because, it's a bunch of brothers that were coaching against each other in Jersey. Nunzio, and you can't get any more Italian than that, right? Nunzio Campanile. He just went from Rutgers to Syracuse. He was the interim coach at Rutgers, head coach at Rutgers for a while. But the whole family there, from dad into the sons, have created a great story. Northeast, I don't know what people draw up as Northeast and all that, but
yeah, I say Maryland up north and east to me. Then,
yeah, and I kind of do the same thing. I once said Ohio was the Northeast, and people really got
yeah,
but it's not Midwest. It's not really. It's next to Pennsylvania. But no, I would say I could go on and on. The guys that helped make my career when I was young, that are from the Lehigh Valley. I will tell you this: the most disappointing thing for me, and well as a head coach, is we're not going to have the guys that stick around for 40 and 50 years, which is what I grew up with. George Curry at Berwick, when Berwick was a national power. God rest his soul.
Central Buck.
Mike Patton. Mike Patton Sr. Love him to death. He helped make my career.
I like how you emphasize senior, that you love senior. You didn't say junior.
I can tell some senior and junior stories over a beer. But or a glass of wine, whatever you choose, or a Coca-Cola, it doesn't matter. But yeah, no, senior, Mike Patton Sr. One of my favorite interviews, and you talk about storytelling, was when Junior was named the head coach of the Browns, and Mike was in retirement in Florida, and I called him up and I said, let's do 20 minutes. We'll just kind of talk and enjoy all this and reminisce a little bit. Well, we did a full hour, and we probably could have done 3 hours. And the storytelling in that, not by me. I was smart enough to shut up. That's the other thing. What's not a good storyteller? When you want to make it about you. On and on.
I know what you mean, man. It's crazy that
you got to shut up sometimes.
Yeah.
but yeah, he was another wonderful man. Again, God rest his soul. You talk about Maryland down that way, some of the guys there in the Washington Catholic Athletic Conference, just class acts. Coach Malloy at Good Counsel, I still, have a relationship with him. That's the fun stuff. So I guess that's the Northeast type of guys.
So Virginia South, like I know George Smith and Mike Smith. I think, and then there's the coach in, what is it, South Carolina, that's got so many wins.
Tom Knotts, who was at Independence. He now owns 13 state titles between South and North Carolina. He was our coach of the year a couple of years ago.
Where's he at now?
He is at Dutch Fork, and Dutch Fork is a powerhouse. It's outside of Columbia, South Carolina, and they were a top 25 team over the last 2, 3, 4 years. I think they've won 6 titles in the last 7. He's good. Georgia's got a lot of great coaches. Florida has so many great coaches. I feel bad there's an exodus there because of the pay scale. Yeah. It's just not, people are running out. You've got a Josh Niblett who was at Hoover, who's now in Gainesville, Georgia, and they're pumping. They're the red elephants. I call them the green elephants because they're spending lots of money. They just built $1 million indoor facility.
Wow.
A lot of wonderful guys. And then one of the neat stories that I like to tell is we moved back to Georgia from California 4 years ago. And I met a guy when I was in Pennsylvania. I used to do Lehigh and Lafayette football. And this young man was a linebacker, undersized linebacker with Lehigh back in 99, 2000, something like that. And he had moved back to his home state of Georgia and became an assistant at Buford. Buford is a very good program. They're the
Yeah.
only team in Georgia to win in every class they've been in. They've gone from 1 to 6. It's a growing area. They had a shot at 7 this year. They didn't get to it. But anyway, Brian Appling is his name. He became the head coach 4 years ago. And Brian and I used to do a lot of interviews for Lehigh, for the TV show, for the radio show. And we hadn't seen each other in 23 years. And this year, the first game of the year, I decided to venture over to see him play one of the top teams from Alabama. As a matter of fact, he was two three-time defending state champs, Buford against Thompson. And I hadn't seen Bryant since, like I said, 99 or 2000. I walked across and he looked at me and he kind of rubbed his eyes and he's like, what are you doing here? And we picked up like we had never left each other. And we kind of joked. I said, "Oh well, this hair is a little bit or a lot grayer or whiter than yours," and of course his beard's all salt and peppered. And just that meant everything to me. That there was some sort of an impact and friendship that came out of it. And better than anybody, the coaching profession is one of the tightest, most sharing. Yeah, there's an ego here and there, but at the end of the day, it's a pretty special profession.
Yep, I had Bobby Bentley, who was the head coach at Burns. I had him on the podcast. He's a great guy. So, let's just go
I had
over
him on years ago.
Yeah, he's legit. And I wish somebody in Virginia would hire him. Let's just go over there to California, because you said you lived in California. I mean, you got, the great. What was the team that had the great winning record? Modern Day's always been great, but the team that they made the movie about.
De La Salle, Bob Ladouceur. Bob Ladouceur, man,
that was special.
As good as they come. As good as they come. I had the pleasure of talking to Bob several times, but Coach Ladouceur, the last time I interviewed him was with Jim Caviezel, who was playing him in a movie, a film. Legendary 150.
That's the guy that played.
That's the guy that played Jesus in Passion of the Christ. Yeah. Jim Caviezel's a cool guy and a huge sports fan. Anyway, but I'm sitting down interviewing Bob Ladouceur, Coach Ladouceur, and Jim Caviezel, who's playing him in a movie. So when Hollywood does a movie about you and doesn't trick it up with anything, I mean, you don't trick up a 151 game win streak.
Nah. You don't have to change.
That kind of writes itself.
Yeah, you don't have to change anything.
Yeah, Bob was a good guy. Is a good guy. Bruce Rollinson at the other end at Modern Day. He's had all the Matt Leinerts of the world, the Matt Barkleys, Bryce Young, who may be a number 1 pick coming up here in a couple of days. Bruce and I are very, very tight. He just retired at the end of the season. Jason Negro, who's at St. John Bosco, an alum. I love those stories too, by the way. Awesome football coach, but he's doing it at his alma mater. Likes to go back, and there's so many stories, like that. I just talked about a guy that when I moved out to California, I can't remember how many state championships Harry Welch won. He was just a super guy. And again, questions we get, well, why have you moved around the country so much? We believe in boots on the ground. We like to have people see us as opposed to just sitting in some ivory tower at some place. It builds the company better when people can look at you and go, yeah, Jeff's a good guy. Oh, Trish Hoffman, his wife, they're good people. They're doing what they say they'll do. They're not about, I would rather have 10,000 Twitter followers as long as they're good people.
Yeah. I mean, I was just kind of thinking about this thing, and after talking to you, I kind of realized it. Like, y'all don't cover the whole country, but y'all basically, I mean, guys don't talk to you unless they're the GOATs. You're not messing around with the guys that's got losing records. I mean, you're talking about guys who are big time coaches.
No, well, you asked some of the best. No, I love, as I said to you before, I love the little school story and all that. And what surprises most people if they reach out on Twitter with respect, I will personally answer them and talk with them.
Wow.
And I no, I we all have egos, right?
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't do what we do without an ego, but you got to have your ego in check. So no, the people that I'm talking to, I could name if I sat down and could write it out. Hundreds of coaches that I have really wonderful relationships with that nobody knows. They're not in the top 100. They're not even probably in the top 1,000 for that matter. But they understand what we do and how we do it. And we have a coaches job board that we do for free to promote coaches. We want to do as much as we can for the profession. We want to keep our sport strong, and I think the sport has never been stronger safety wise, education wise. Like I said, the only thing that I would ever say that disappoints me is I don't think we're going to have those 40 and 50-year lifers, right? Because there's a burnout factor, dude. You're first off, it's no longer a 4 month a year sport, right? Even though we all like to see multiple sports, you gotta, multiple sport athletes. We've got to keep, we got to keep going and grinding through it. And then you got the parent, thing and all that other stuff. But kudos to each and every coach, yourself, any coach that's watching, any coach that's ever coached. The world would be much better off if we had football coaches running things.
Yeah, I mean, why is Nick Saban not president? Yeah, we would
Well,
definitely be winners.
well,
We
well,
would be winners.
living in Georgia and knowing a lot of people feel that Kirby Smart's just as smart.
Yeah, I mean, what?
Again,
I
I
mean,
try to keep from getting people mad at me.
yeah, Tommy Tuberville. I mean, he's a senator. James Tim wants to know thoughts recruiting and versus the NIL. Do you have any? Has that affected high schools any? And what do you think about that? As far as I know, you don't get into the
We
recruiting
don't do a
stories,
whole lot
but
of recruiting.
yeah,
Just the knee jerk is, the NIL hurts high school football. It hurts recruiting. I mean, I heard a story the other day from someone that said, "Can you help my son? He's probably a tweener." I still like to say, Division One and Division One AA. I know it's FBS and FCS, but I like to be old school in that. And at the end of the conversation, he said, "Well, and I can bring some NIL money to the program. I can donate some money. If they just give my kid an opportunity."
but you want to
I'm
walk
not saying
on?
that wasn't. I wasn't. Was that?
He wants to
Come again?
walk on.
He wants to walk on. Yeah,
Oh,
he had opportunity to play at at the one AA level and maybe some of the lower Division One programs, but he wanted to be at a major program, and he had just suggested that it
yeah,
would be okay for me to say that there could be some money that comes along with it that could be in the form of an NIL and all that.
money
So
talks.
yeah,
Money
and then
talks.
what
Write a
was the
big
kid
check.
that? Yeah, the kid from Texas, Clint Ewers, who skipped his senior season, so he didn't get hurt, and goes to Ohio State. And now he's at Texas, I believe.
Yes.
I don't know. To me, I would always say, and I'm sort of sticking to it only because there's 15,000 high schools in America, but I still believe high school football is still the last bastion of amateurism, but the
Mm.
NIL is not helping my statement. Put it at that.
Yes, sir.
And,
So
and yeah, and the portal, we can go into that too. That's just another
yeah,
whatever.
it's another that's another Pandora's box. I guess they got to deal with. I mean, we haven't talked much about Texas. I mean, is everything bigger in
Yeah.
Texas?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, it is the Friday Night Lights, and if you've ever had the pleasure, like I have, I think I've driven across it 3 or 4 times. There are some tiny towns there that eat, breathe, sleep. They're 6-man football. They're 2A football because 6-man's 1A and all that. It's all that it's cracked up to be. Some of the great stadiums there. Whether it's the Allen Taj Mahal that was built, I guess, going on probably 12, 13 years ago. Katy, Texas, where they built a behemoth, a Taj Mahal right next to the other stadium because there's 8 or 9 schools in the school district right now. It's
Yeah.
everything that it's cracked up to be. The biggest thing right now that kind of is in the media's purview is, why doesn't Texas, if it's all cracked up to be what it is, play some of the powerhouses, the teams we talked about, the St. Thomas Aquinas,
Yeah.
the Modern Days and all that.
IMG.
Yeah, well, and St. John Bosco beat Allen with the Taj Mahal in the Taj Mahal last year. So some of the teams that have taken on some of the private schools have not fared well, which tarnishes that reputation a little bit, right? So that's kind of the scuttlebutt amongst the media members out there. Why doesn't Texas go outside of its borders? Well, they've got 1,100 schools. It's a big state.
It's like a country. I don't
It's
know.
another country. Yeah,
I mean,
1,100 schools. What do
if they
you have
could be,
there?
they would be their own country. Dinwiddie High School down here south of Richmond is going up to play Glenville, Ted Ginn Senior's school. So that's big.
That's
The
big.
coach at Dinwiddie is great. His name's Billy Mills, and they just announced that 2 days ago, because we were supposed to scrimmage Dinwiddie. We scrimmage them every year, but the day of our scrimmage, they're going up there to play Glenville. And I don't know who signed up for that deal, but Glenville, they're usually playing in the state championship every year.
They won a title last year. They won a title, finished in our top 300. You were asking before, and I was saying you got to do your homework and all that. Well, I didn't do any homework coming into this. My wife said, "Do you need to do any?" I said, "No, we're just going to talk football, and hopefully what I say makes some sense." But I was thinking about a program you have there in Virginia that's been in our small schools top 25, and I know they're moving from 1A to 2A this year, I believe. It's Riverhead or Riverheads?
Riverheads. Robert
Yeah.
Castro. He wins the state championship every year. I mean,
Good
he runs
program.
the
Tell me
Cinnamon
about it.
Wing Tee Boom. You know they're gonna run the ball. You know where they're gonna run it, and you ain't gonna be able to stop it. And they don't have super athletes. I mean, all their kids kind of look the same. I mean, they all about the same size, O lineman, D lineman, and they beat teams that's got better athletes because they just out execute you. And they run like super power with the quarterback tossing the ball to a wing back. They run wing tee and boom. And they don't hardly ever throw the ball, but when they do, it's kind of like Paul Johnson's offense. It's going to be a touchdown because nobody's covering the pass.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
the coach is amazing. I mean, they have fireworks. It's a small town.
reminds me of my. Go ahead.
Yeah, you remind you of your hometown.
Yeah, well, we're a little bit bigger than that, but there's a team in Pennsylvania called Southern Columbia that runs that same offense, and they've won 14 or 15 at this point. They've won 3 of our national championships. To me, that would be great, especially in the proximity there between Pennsylvania and Virginia, to see programs like that, because they're both the same size. They're like 1A, 2A type of schools, and they have a coach there. I should mention him, Jim Roth at Southern Columbia. He's heading toward 500 lifetime wins. You didn't get over. I don't know if Louisiana is the southeast or not.
It's kind of going the South. It's the South. It's
South,
SEC
right?
country, and Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi. They're all loaded. So yeah, Louisiana. Go ahead.
Yeah, JT Curtis, the head coach at
the
John
school's
Curtis.
named after him.
Yeah, his dad. His dad's the guy is named after. Well, that's okay. I just want to make sure. But I didn't want people going, well, Jeff should know that.
Yeah.
Troy's the football coach. I'm the media guy. I should know this. But again,
I just know they run the veer.
And they're so good at it. Won a title last year. He is going to this year probably become America's all-time winningest coach. He's over 600 wins. He's going to pass the late great John McKissick from Somerville in South Carolina.
That's what I was thinking about was McKissick, not Tommy Knott.
Yep. The first ever radio show I did for High School Football America was July 21st, 2011. My first 2 guests, John McKissick 1, JT Curtis 2.
That's a good start.
There was a lot of good stuff in between those two people. Just great people like that, and it's I'm just blessed to be a part of this weird and wonderful ride that we've been on, and have a lot of junk in my head that I can talk about.
Yeah, I mean, we've been on here for an hour and 4 minutes, so you got your hour. You wanted a guy that could go an hour. I can go an hour. I mean, I started at 3:00 and I lost one guy, but I'm gonna be going with Coach McNally starting at 8 Eastern time till probably midnight. He'll go all day.
Fun.
High school coaches that went to college or to pro football. There's Paul Brown. He was a high school coach and, went to Ohio State and then, won championships with the Browns. Who are the high school coaches that you've seen make the transition up?
Well, Todd Dodge comes to mind first. Todd was at
South Lake
South Lake
Carroll.
Carroll, and then just retired from Westlake. Hell of a guy. Went to North Texas. Did not have the success he had at the high school level, but wonderful guy. Great offensive mind. Was chunking the ball around when he was in high school before throwing the ball was a big thing. Gary Sanchez at Bishop Gorman. I think it was Gary, who went on to UNLV.
Yeah.
Fair amount of success there. We have had, just recently, a lot of guys making some moves into the instead of going to the HC role, going to a position coach. Big news yesterday out of Texas by Houston, North Shore, which has won 4 state titles under John Kay. John Kay just left to become the linebackers coach at Rice. Couple of Texas guys. I'm trying to remember. I can't think of his guy.
Hugh Freeze and Gus Malzahn's too that I can think of.
Yeah, Gus Malzahn, and I know his quarterback from his high school days, who could probably be a college coach somewhere. Josh Floyd. He's at Hewitt Trustville outside of Birmingham. There's I can't think of Joey McGuire at Texas Tech.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're there. They're when you're really good at the high school level, they expect a whole lot. Like it's always that way, right? But for some reason, if you've been a high school stud in the coaching profession, they expect you to be a stud at the college level, and right? It's just like players that curve goes like this to the college, and then boom to the pro. It changes quite dramatically. But
is there anything that we missed that you would like people to know about high school football America, or anybody you'd like to highlight, or how can people get a hold of y'all?
Yeah, well, it's highschoolfootballamerica.com. Our Twitter account is HSFB America, and if you go to the website, every way to connect there. I think what people should take away from this, and you touched on it before, like, well, how do you do the whole country? Well, we can't, but I do a lot of reading because I'm so excited about what we do. My hands are in there. I'm not some CEO that doesn't do anything. Ask my wife how many hours I put in on a day. But if you're watching this at any point, and you want to reach out to me, you think there's a story there that America should know about, no matter what tiny little part of the country it may be, or the biggest part of the country, let us know. I mean, I am accessible if nothing else. And this wonderful living room that I got here from your background here. I'm not rich, folks. This is some fake background. I like to think that I will always be humble until the day I leave this earth, and even if it's not a story that hits highschoolfootballamerica.com, I like hearing stories. I like being told stories. I don't necessarily always like to be the one telling stories, but if you've got a good one, let's see if we can put it out there so more people know about it.
Jim Tim wants to know, do you hire? He lives in East Strouss. No, he lives in Rochester, New York.
We and my brother used to live up there, so know the area very, very well. As I said earlier, the goal within the next 2 years is to have enough capital that we will be hiring. Right now, a lot of what we do is through people that are part of our team. We do have a small group of investors that got it lifted off, and if the good Lord is willing, we'll get that capital raised and be hiring as many people as we can, because that's the other thing. There are a lot of good journalists that are not working now because of that downsizing you were talking about, how the Richmond paper there, really doesn't even do local sports anymore and all that. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of guys that are out of business. We tried to do a GoFundMe during COVID. It didn't really, go the way I had hoped it did. We got a little bit of traction on it, but, my whole thing about, the really good ones, I gave some people bad names by saying, well, they don't do the job. There's a lot of good ones out there as well that don't have jobs. And I would love to be the person that gets them back on a payroll and let them do what they love, which is tell the story of America through the lens of high school football.
Yeah. Yeah. Tim wants you to play a song on the piano, but Jim, that's a fake background. But you're the best, Jim. I
Uh,
appreciate you coming on, Jeff.
there we go.
And if you could stay on just for a little bit so I can pick your brain after we end, but I thank you, brother, for coming on, man. I'm the low
You're
man
very,
on the
very
totem
welcome.
pole, man. I appreciate you.
Nah, I enjoyed it, and keep working hard. Like I said, make sure you have more questions than yes and no questions.
Okay, right on. Yeah, I'll try. I'm trying. Thank you.
You're welcome.